call the Management Committee meeting together for today, October 25th. I'm Judy Johnson, I chair the committee, and welcome everybody. We do have a quorum, so we can begin the business of the day. Our first item is approval of the agenda. Everybody again has been able to receive and review the agenda that is proposed. Are there any changes or edits to the agenda? Seeing none, then without objection, the agenda is approved. We also received the draft minutes for the October 11th committee meeting. We've had a chance to look at those as well. Are there any edits or changes? Seeing none, then I'd entertain a motion to approve the draft minutes.
Move approval.
Lilligan has moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Osmond. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed no, and that passes unanimously. We have some non-consent items on our business agenda today. And the first one is item 2023-255, and it's an information technology professional services staff augmentation master contract. And we have with us Craig Bantz, our chief information officer, and Ashanti. And I'm sorry, have a moment.
Jody Jacoby.
Thank you, Jody. Ms. Jacoby is also with us today to present on items coming before us. So with that, Craig, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Council
Thank you.
members. It's a pleasure to speak to you again on this topic. You can say we're many things, but planful is definitely one that counts here. This is actually the third part of a multi-part process we've been working on in partnership with Counsel and my colleagues at Procurement and OEO for more than 18 months. It's actually the 7th Council action related to this item, and I'm going to try and cover some of the details of that history, since maybe everybody doesn't remember 18 months ago about IT stuff in detail, and then bring us to today. So I just wanted to start at what is IT professional services, and then I'll get into why we need them, and then what we're doing to secure them. So in our case, IT professional services is really on-demand IT staff. We use these temporary staff to help augment our team when we have particular projects that require kind of a flow and versus an ebb in resource to achieve, when we require additional skills that we might not have a long-term need for in our group, and also to backfill when there are vacancies from retirements or people moving on to other opportunities. The typical government IT budget is about 11% allocated to professional services. Historically, IS's budget has been about 2% allocated to professional services, and 23 were 3%. So this is an area we're still learning and growing about. And I think this journey we're going to share today is a step on our journey, or a step in that progression for us. And I just want to clarify in this case, we're not speaking to outsourcing. We're really talking about staff augmentation and project support and delivery, rather than the long-term replacement of staff inside the council. All right, so this is the 10,000-foot view, and I'm going to talk about each one of these dots a little bit more in detail in the future here. But I wanted to start by reminding folks that in 2022, we declared an emergency declaration for information services staffing because we were having a difficult time delivering IT services due to vacancies. Later in 22, we came forward with a further proposal to this group to bridge our emergency declaration funds by leveraging a cooperative purchasing venture, an established contract mechanism to provide IT staffing services to the council. This really begins part of a really planful engagement with this group in particular. We could have conceivably gone and used these state terms and a lot of individual, transactions employee by employee, and not have had to bother you all with these matters. We wanted to generate transparency both for this group and for the community of vendors that we work with about our aspirations and intentions here. And today is definitely inclusion of that as we look at our long-term solution. So why did we start the journey in the first place? Well, the Great Resignation is a really key driver of why we started this journey. It would resulted in our emergency declaration. Typically in 2022, a lot of organizations experienced about 11 to 13% turnover in IT. It's kind of the average we're finding out. The typical turnover at the council's IT department is about 3 to 5% a year. So 11 is much greater. And in 2022, we experienced about 11% turnover in IS. So it didn't put us outside the norm for IT organizations as a whole, but it's a big change from where we have been historically. And on top of that, we already had some vacancies we were struggling to fill that had never had anyone in them. So they were net new positions around data and security in particular. So that really brought our vacancy rate up to as much as 30% in the IT department. And so that put continuity of operations at some risk. I promise you I'm going to talk about where we are at the end of the presentation today, because I suspect that's a topic of interest. So the first step of kind of this 3-step, very deliberate plan was an emergency declaration for $4 million. The emergency declaration did not add any money to the IT budget. Rather, it allowed for some flexibility in our expenditure of those dollars to secure services very quickly to address those critical needs. I'm very pleased to say that we were quite successful in maintaining IT core operations during this period of time, which is not true for everybody. And so we managed to keep our core service metrics consistent with 2019 levels, pre-pandemic, really in response to the availability of professional services. And then something that I'm particularly proud of is even though the emergency declaration did not have an income goal associated with it, nor do they typically, we were really able to, even in this crisis, prioritize income spend, and we're rounding out the emergency declaration spend at about 50% of dollars going to incomes. And so even in a crisis, I think there's room to prioritize underrepresented suppliers. So here's a quick overview of that timeline in case people are focused or interested. April is really when we started the emergency declaration, and we really expended those funds, the last bits of them, this year. All right, that brought us to this kind of interim step. So we acknowledge that, well, we can't do what we've done in the past, which is really ignore professional services as a component of IT, but we also don't overnight have all the structures in place to thoughtfully apply them. So in order to not inflate the emergency declaration greater than the $4 million, we came to this body with an interim strategy that we could use as a bridge until we could implement our third step, our long-term strategy, which is the RFP we're here to talk to you today about in a second. So we used a series of cooperative purchasing venture agreements in order to establish the $6 million bridge. Unfortunately, those cooperative purchasing venture Sourcewell we use only really has 4 mega vendors on the list. None of them are in Cubs. They all have revenue in about the $20 billion range. So they are distinctly not in Cubs, and none of them are Minnesota-based. However, it did allow us to continue our continuity of operations and spend real energy on this long-term strategy of an RFP. So that brings us to talking about today, and we hope today will be our strategy for the next 5 or so years in this space, and in addition to other solicitations on an as-needed basis. The goal of this solicitation was essentially to establish a pool of vendors, if that makes sense, especially with a lot of outreach in Cubs, that we could then on a case-by-case basis, as need arises, leverage this set of master contracts to fulfill those needs with a lot more optionality than any kind of state or cooperative purchasing venture offers us, and at a better value. I will soon be leaning on my peers to weigh in on this, but I think that this kind of structure represents a number of points of innovation for the council, both in our procurement and OEO practices and in our IT practices. One of them is instead of kind of establishing a traditional goal for income spend by vendor, where we might say every vendor must hit 10% or whatever, we instead, in partnership with OEO, established a goal for total spend by year in the program. And my department in IS took responsibility for the goal. So rather than the vendors taking responsibility for the goal, we in IS are taking responsibility for the goal. And this allows us to work with MCUPs directly in more cases and spend as direct suppliers rather than, as we often see MCUPs getting subbed from larger vendors like those $20 billion ones. And so our hope here is that, not our hope, our practice will be to, as we implement or as we spend against the contract, to constantly check in with our partners in OEO, assess where our spend level is. If it's dipping anywhere lower than 25%, to really focus on driving more spend to the MCUB vendors identified in procurement. Ashanti, is there anything else that should be said in here? I feel like I'm not doing all your team's work.
Thanks, Craig. Chair, Council and Committee members, Ashanti Payne, Assistant Director, Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity. And really, I don't and cannot take a lot of the credit for this. It's definitely something that we want to highlight as a best practice. Our role was really to support the goals and objectives that were presented to us in the best way possible. But as Craig mentioned, we did a number of things differently, and it would have been very easy for IS to say, let's just do this how we've normally done it, quickly, and let's get it over with. But we really took the time to do outreach. We had an outreach event that was very well attended, excuse me, by MCUB businesses. We had a lot of interest around it. There was a lot of positive feedback from the small business community relative to the council's effort in this regard. And it did take more time than it would have if we'd have moved in a different direction. But I think the outcomes really kind of highlight the intentionality and work that IS put forward. And we were there just to support and provide what they needed to make it happen.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I think it's emblematic emblematic of that investment is really the number of plan holders we had on this. We had 188 registered plan holders, 125 of those were MCUBs. That's a lot of entering MCUB engagement for any procurement. And we also see that in our final recommendations with 11 of the recommended vendors being MCUBs to move forward. Jody, should I?
Chair Johnson, council members, my name is Jody Jacoby and I'm the Chief Procurement Officer. And like my colleagues Ashanti and Craig, we're very excited to be here today to share with you this really intentional and collaborative process. And some staff from procurement, Marie Ozan and Emily Connolly, who facilitated this procurement. This took a lot of work. As Ashanti mentioned, this was not a standard procurement. And so some of the things that were done, and I just want to share with you because it's not only courageous, but it's also brave to try things new. And so I think it is worth acknowledging some of the effort that got us to this outcome and what you're seeing in the business item. So one of the things that we did was we held, and again, in coordination with IS and the Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity, we held an outreach virtual event before the advertisement was posted. And 39 MCUB vendors attended that. And we taught them and showed them how to do business with us. And so we not only showed them how to navigate the website, but also to download the solicitation documents and read the advertisement. And we really went slow so we could go faster when that advertisement was posted. We posted an advance advertisement on the council's website on October 21st. And from there, that ad was directly sent to 144 vendors, as well as 39 MCUB vendors who attended that virtual event. We released an addenda after the ad was published and sent some of those virtual trainings. And so we tried some new things, and we really wanted to embed training and education and information to help them be successful when that advertisement was released. The result was literally, it was exceptional, it was incredible, and frankly, it was quite overwhelming. There were 111 proposals received. And so that meant our staff had to do responsiveness checks on 111 proposals. And it took a lot of time and collaboration to review those proposals. But we really believe we got a good result based on that initial effort and all that work by staff. This is probably one of the best deltas that we have with actual plan holders downloading the documents to what proposals received. We had 188 plan holders registered and 111 proposals received. So really great response. And that RFP was advertised with a little bit longer time for 51 days. Typically, our time period is about 30 days. Go ahead.
Oh, please, no.
Just gonna. So after, if you approve this business item and execute the contracts, how it works after the contracts are awarded is a little bit different as well, where each service order will have each vendor will receive an order for service email with information on that specific project request. And all of those vendors will have up to 5 days to respond, where that mini RFP or evaluation will be occurring. And included in the solicitation and included as part of the process is our MCUB sheltered market program, where if that estimated value of the work is less than $175,000, it'll be sheltered off to those 11 MCUB vendors only to provide a pricing on the work. And so we're very excited about this work. We are very excited about the competitive nature and the number of vendors responding to it. Any comments on the statement of work?
I think that this not only ensures opportunity for all of the vendors in the proposed item, but it also ensures value for the council. So we were not just saying, oh, well, give us your, proposed rates and, we'll distribute it in some kind of round robin fashion. Instead, we're preserving competition on a case-by-case basis when we're engaging. So it kind of creates a small market inside this procurement. And I think that both will drive better quality resources to the council, better value, and of course, more income engagement. Great. Any further thoughts? That's the new button. All right. so I just wanted to take, you've heard a little bit about this partnership. It's taken us a lot of time. Imagine reviewing 111, dozen-page proposals with panels. We had to establish multiple panels when normally most RFPs have one. We had to establish multiple tiers and rounds of panel review. It was really a massive investment of energy, and OEO even had members serve on our panel. Procurement really did an amazing job facilitating and finding ways to expedite those processes. And so I just wanted to take another moment to thank OEO and procurement for just exceptional partnership, doing something totally new and something that I hope can be the foundation of future engagements. So I've also, and I can't speak for every procurement that's ever happened, but I recently spent last week at a conference and I asked, at least 24 other CIOs, how are you tackling this? Everyone was like, oh, we want to learn more about how you did that. I have yet to find anybody else with this kind of creative and comprehensive an approach as to what we're bringing to the table here. So I'm excited for this to potentially be a model for other organizations. All right. The last thing I just wanted to indicate is that, you're seeing a number that's pretty big there, $35 million. So the $35 million number does not commit us to a particular amount of spend. That's a not to exceed value. There are actually no minimums in this business item or the contracts we anticipate negotiating. We've chosen a slightly higher number, both to align with the potential growth and out years of the IS consulting line of our budget, seeing as we're still at a little bit of a delta compared to our peers. And also because there's a lot of aspirations in front of us for the Council for IT, things like the TRIPS program and new laboratory technologies and environmental services that might require these kind of additional support resources to materialize as we approach them. So just to be clear, it's a not to exceed value, and we'll operate the expenditure within the confines of the existing IS budget. All right, I promised you a staffing update. So just a quick recap, in 2022, we saw about an 11% turnover in IT. That was on the low end of what the market was looking like as a whole. In 2023, which we're not quite through, we're projecting about a 7% turnover. So we've made significant progress on reducing turnover in IT. And I will say one thing in particular is that we've really inverted the equation in what a regrettable versus non-regrettable turnover is. In 22, we had a lot of regrettable turnover. That is not as much the case now. Like for instance, I don't think any of
Craig,
us.
could you just repeat that last stat you gave?
So what we have done is we've kind of inverted the ratio of regrettable versus non-regrettable turnover. For instance, while it might be painful, I would not consider somebody successfully retiring after 30 years of service a regrettable thing for the council. I actually think it's a wonderful accomplishment for both the council and the employee in question. In 22, we're really losing people that was premature in the cycle we'd hoped to have them here for. And that equation is changing, is stabilizing more to what we would have expected. We've also made, and this is huge, significant progress in hiring volume. In 21, we hired 9 people. In 2022, we hired 14 people. So far this year, we've hired 28 people. We are essentially doubling our hiring rate this year about every quarter. Some of that's market conditions have improved a little bit, but also it's a great partnership with HR, who's brought a lot of resources to bear to expedite our processes, to creatively advertise, and to engage, passive candidates who aren't even thinking about it, maybe a new job opportunity, and even at our peer organizations to come consider the opportunities here at the council. So we're projecting a full staffing at IS at the rate, and it's difficult to project a trend with only a few months of data, but we're projecting full staffing in probably the second or third quarter. We anticipate a little bit of a slowdown around the holidays hiring in general, just kind of takes a pause there as applicants also take some time off. But so we really managed to bend these curves in very positive directions, both retention and in acquisition of new team members.
And Craig, how many people in IT are there altogether as far as actual people that are in their roles and versus budgeted? What is the delta between those two?
Yeah, we have, we made 3 offers today, so it creates a little bit of ambiguity, but we have about 13 vacancies, I want to say, left right now, give or take how those 3 offers turned out.
And what is your fully authorized, your full?
Yeah, we're right around 140.
140, and only 13 vacancies at this point. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Making good progress. One of those is a vacancy that we've never had filled, for instance. I think we're closing in on a candidate finally for that.
That's great. And are these at all levels, entry level all the way on up, or are you seeing them concentrated in certain areas?
Our vacancies have been pretty evenly distributed. We're having a little bit more success hiring at entry and mid-level and very senior positions.
Well, does the committee have any questions? Councilmember Seifert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question on, well, first of all, this is amazing to put this level of effort in, really think new about how to do things. So I really, I've been challenging people to do that and you really stepped up. Is there going to be kind of an assessment loop, like after 6 months or so, to say how the MCUB's doing? Or is there a portion of the MCUBs that are not getting any of the work at all, even though they have an agreement, a master services agreement, over the 175, to ensure that MCUBs are getting some of those grants, just to, maybe there's a feedback loop for training again on some responsiveness. So just to keep more work, but to keep the ball rolling.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. One thing I hope to do is, in strong partnership with OEO, we've been tracking MCUB spend with IS. I get regular reporting from OEO. That's how we were able to achieve such a high degree of MCUB spend with the emergency declaration. So I envision continuing that reporting and expanding that, because I have committed actually in a formal memo to OEO to deliver a particularly high total spend with MCUBs. I'm going to have to keep a strong eye on that to ensure it. And so that's one thing I hope to do. And I think, we were just speaking as a team before this presentation about how we view this as kind of our first step of many steps in learning in this journey. And so a big question to me is how do we continue to bring MCUBs into the fold and future opportunities? So please.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Cedarburg, I was just asking my staff about that with some of the successful delta between number of plan holders and proposals submitted. Like what was it? Was it some of that early training? Was it how we engaged, how we taught them how to download the documents? Did we go slower? And so we're really looking at some of those specific initiatives. And I just mentioned as a stretch project for next year, really pulling forward some of those things that we tried and that we felt were successful and implementing them as a standard practice as we're moving forward.
Great question, Councilmember Pacheco.
Madam Chair, members, is there, obviously there's a lot of lessons learned in this, and how applicable are those lessons to what we're doing with purchasing for the light rail, blue or green, or is there any other things that you think you could do very similar or make it better?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Pacheco, yes. I think the one thing that I couldn't stress enough is to highlight this as an example for the agency to look at and learn from. And we've learned a lot through this process. And in talking to some of our teams, procurement and OEEO attended a outreach event at the University of Minnesota Supplier Diversity event. And there's a lot of buzz around this. So a lot of the firms are coming up to the Met Counsel booth, and they were talking about some of the things that other agencies are doing. And I just talked to Craig, and I'm like, hey, we should kind of, tweak this program, might even make it less burdensome on the staff, but also still achieve our outcomes and objectives. But yes, I cannot say enough how this is an example to be promoted, shared, celebrated for the agency to use in other arenas, other areas for success.
Great question. Do you have any follow-up to that? Good. Anyways, Councilmember Lewis?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks for the questions and thanks for the great work. I do have more of a technical question in a minute, but the response to Councilmember Pacheco's question, so I guess from where we're sitting, how do we do that? How do we lift this and maybe use it in other areas? Are you gonna guide us on that, Ashanti, or? Yeah.
I have an idea. We will just ask you strongly, tell you that this is great and tell us how else you can do it and bring it back to us in the future. We would really love to see that within the realm of all that is possible.
Yes, Chair, council members. Yes, and this is not something that myself or OEEO can do alone. It definitely takes partnership and collaboration, and procurement is a key partner in terms of doing exactly and taking on that responsibility and moving it forward.
Thanks, and Madam Chair, I just really appreciate your leadership in this area as well. I think a lot of the responsibility for doing this lies here on this side of the table, and so I'm sure all committed to doing that. So I look forward to that in the future. And then I had a question. I think you might have touched on this on slide 12, and I know this took a lot of upfront work between IT and OEO, and I'm wondering what the analysis has been to the ongoing costs of implementing this, and actually even that sort of upfront work that went in. I mean, obviously feel it's worth it. I'm just wondering sort of the magnitude.
I would venture to say I think we're still in the phase of assessing that, kind of that project closeout, if that makes sense. We want to go back and assess what we can learn and where we exactly landed. I mean, burdensome, clearly the ROI is worth it without the data, I can tell you right off the bat, but to be continued, but we certainly follow up with future information I know it can be.
And then are there tails or costs going forward, do we know, or is this a more expensive way are we operationalizing a more costly way of doing business, or was it this upfront part that was the larger investment?
I think the impression from the IT side, and I don't want to speak for all of my partners, that this is largely an upfront cost. And if anything, we actually believe it'll be net less effort for us in IT in the long run. This system of doing orders for services, I think, presents a great degree of efficiency as we will leverage that probably 30 to 40 times a year. And so versus us going and doing a novel procurement every time and creating a new solicitation, that is essentially a one-page form in an email. And so it really reduces the burdens both for us and our partners.
Great to hear. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, great question. Any other questions, Councilmember Pacheco?
Chair members, yes, I'm looking at this because again, with the chamber, the Latino chamber, we're looking at how we can get more supplier versus how we get more Latino businesses. And it's not only government, but as well as the corporate sector. I'd like to see how the corporate sector's response would be there. I mean, the chair of my board is head of supplier diversity for U.S. Bank. And so having walked through this, it'd be an interesting way. And maybe have some of these other chambers support what we're doing or advocate, because we're, and it's true just across the board. It's not pointing fingers at anybody, but the part of transportation, a lot of government entities aren't making their goals. And there was just an article recently about that. And again, I'm not pointing fingers or anything. I think we all need to do better at preparing and do better at advocating each other's strengths. We're not in competition. We got a lot of people that need the work. So I'm looking forward to how we can play a role in that.
Madam Chair, council members, I really do think this is a huge success, but it's a success of our staff who are doing the work. It was staff being courageous to try something new. There was a lot of work up front. There were a lot of conversations with our partners internally and with a lot of vendors who we haven't done work with. But this project really emphasized going slow and listening and being courageous to try some new approaches, which yielded a really great outcome. And regardless if we do an exact replication, we've learned a lot through this. And trust that we'll continue to implement some of these best practices or initiatives. And if anything, it will help our staff be more courageous and know they're supported in those areas where we can try something a little different. So very, very successful. How the contract is going to be structured, if you do approve it for award, we'll assure we're getting good prices because you're doing that many RFPs. So I do believe long-term this will save a lot of money. It creates that engagement and interest from our supplier community. So from the start to the end, it's been a really great process for all of us.
Great. I would just say if there's a way to put a case study around this as you're going through it, and use it. You'll probably get called to go to conferences and speak on it, I'm sure. But I really want to focus on the word partnerships too, because having chaired the audit committee, you recognize that you've got an audit department that is working to get other departments to comply or do things or innovate or all of that, right? And I recognized early on when we were getting reports like, this one's still lingering a bit. And you recognize that it's really about those departments saying, okay, we need to get this done. People are gonna own it. And I can only imagine that there's some bit of similarity here when you're working with, trying to get more MCOB diversity, with our vendors and our suppliers, and just getting the departments. So IS, hats off to you in a very big way with huge needs during a pandemic and more. I'm just really so proud of everybody in the team who worked on this, because we're proud of everybody at the council. Let's be honest. But this is great because a few years ago we asked you to be tenacious in all the ways, whether it's with our investments in banking or procurement or all of that, and you're coming through. So I just want you to know from this committee we are so grateful and so excited about the work you're doing. So I'd like to just in some way, of course, I'm sure you are, capturing that. And I really encourage, I appreciate all the questions, and Councilmember Lilligren, we will be telling them in a good way, in a positive leadership kind of way, but we want this from the other departments too. And I'm sure they're thinking about it and working on it, and they go through all of the committees too. So all of the committees should be encouraging the things that are coming through your own committees. But I just, again, be bold, be courageous, be brave. And it's harder maybe at the beginning, but if we can get to where we want to go, great. Sometimes you try something new and it doesn't work, but that's okay too, because you're learning, right? So all of the hard work you've put into this is wonderful, and we just encourage you to keep going. And when you look at the item report that's in here, and you see with the asterisks how many MCUB businesses that are part of all of this, that's exciting too. So I would just, again, continue to do the things you're doing, just even like breaking up those big contracts that started a few years ago, so that people have a shot. I mean, that's just great. And so maybe others too in the region and beyond will catch on to what we're doing here. I hope so, because I agree with Councilmember Pacheco. There is enough for everybody. There's a need for people to have good paying jobs and have a shot and feel like they have a shot at it. And then the only thing is, I remember I sat in on one of the, I think, virtual meetings that, and I think it was, this, and that was just interesting, to just sit there and, listen to how our staff was explaining and guiding people through the whole process, because I learned a lot just by listening in, and I thought that was pretty cool. So, are there any other questions? Councilmember Osmond.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Well, this is very amazing. And I think doing new way is sometimes very scary thing, but this is a very, very good stuff. And I think it will be model to the other agencies to follow the similar thing. And I think going slowly and doing some educational before even started is the deal breaker. The MCAP small businesses sometimes struggle how to navigate around. So I really encourage, and I will look forward this in next time, even do better. Thank you.
Yeah, you guys are on your boards riding the 10-story wave. Keep going. Councilmember Pacheco.
Yeah, provided that, Madam Chair, provided information is crucial, because I just looked, have another request for proposal, but when I read it, they already determined what they want, what they're gonna give, and it's like there's no creative response other than no. I can't get it by tomorrow. It's just, and so I think having that, and people do have pre-proposal meetings or call-ins and like, but they're really quick and very general. You don't learn much from them. So I think what we're doing and including all those elements makes a big difference.
Well, if there are no other questions, we do have the proposed action before us that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to award and execute contracts 22P172A-EE for informational technology, professional services staff augmentation for a 5-year term for a cumulative not to exceed amount of $35 million as stated in the report. Is there a motion?
So
Moved by Lilligren, seconded by Pacheco. Any further discussion?
just one thought there, Chris, even relative to the motion, but this is such good news. I'm just wondering how we're gonna communicate it to the rest of the council.
Yeah, so I have an item tonight, but what I'm gonna do is ask the council to review this meeting and
Perfect.
watch it back.
Thank you.
Because they'll get, I think, the much broader picture. And then certainly, as we move forward, this is a 5-year term, we'll get updates and more communication on how we're doing. And again, just encouraging other council members and the chair, of course, to tune in. So that was my thought tonight, so that it didn't kind of just go through as a, oh,
It's a
that's
$35
another thing we're doing. No, this is a big thing. So I might opine a little bit on it, try not to get too far off script because I don't want to make staff freak out or anything. But yeah, I hope everybody can watch this. And again, these are the things that, I know there's a lot of news out there in the world and a lot of news in the region, but these are really good things that if they aren't making headlines somewhere, they should be. So just know you're making our headlines here at the council. It's really great. All right, so we've got a motion and a second. Any other discussion on this? Seeing none then, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. And that passes unanimously. So good job. All right, thank you. And with that, we've got our next item. Oh, actually, the next item is what we're bringing forward. Sorry about that tonight. That's right. So I may have misspoke there. When is this item coming before the council? Is that tonight?
Tonight.
Okay,
Yep.
so I just want to make sure I wasn't on the wrong item for tonight. Thank you. All right, so this is item 2023-256, and it's the same week. So this is the Triennial DBE goal and Triennial EPA DBE goal. And Ashanti is still with us, so take it off, Ashanti.
Thank you,
Next.
Madam Chair, council members. Ashanti Payne, Assistant Director, Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity. And I'm here to present on the proposed disadvantaged business enterprise goals for both the Federal Transit Administration and Equal Protection Agency. So I did, or I should say, myself and Dr. Myers, we hired the University of Minnesota to conduct our methodology, and we were here and presented all of the details back in September. So I'm not going to go to that level of detail. I'm just going to go over the process, what we've done, and what got us here today, and some slight overview. So of course, the Federal Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, we operate under the guidance of 49 CFR Part 26. And we're required every 3 years to set an overall program goal for our FTA. This same requirement does not exist in terms of establishing an overall goal for EPA, but we operate them the same for obvious reasons, relative to consistency, transparency, accountability. It does require a 30-day public comment period as well prior to approval. Of course, in 2019, the EPA suspended the requirement to set a 3-year goal, as I just mentioned, but we still operate it in that same manner as we do our FTA. So bottom line, the proposed goal for FTA is 13.4%, with 11% being race conscious, race and gender conscious, and 2.4% being race and gender neutral. And then the EPA goal we are proposing is 11.9%, with a race conscious component of 5.4% and a race neutral component of 6.5%. So just very generally, the methodology, we determine availability rates in our well-defined geographic market area. We produce any adjustments to the DBE goal, and regulation does stipulate that you must propose to meet the maximum portion possible through race and gender neutral means. So to further clarify what that means, because I know sometimes that gets construed in many different ways, it means when we set a project goal or a specific goal, that is race and gender conscious. Now, if we achieve participation up and above those goals we set, we call that race and gender neutral. Or if we don't set a goal on a project, but we still get DBE participation, that is also participation that was achieved through race and gender neutral means. So just some of the actions we've taken. The FDA 30-day public comment period beginning on August 28th, ended September 28th. We received a total of 18 comments. None of the comments were specific to the methodology, and they range from we should make the goal higher to we should eliminate the DB program altogether. We also received comments from council members as well. We had a presentation to the EAC, and of course we presented to the management committee, and we presented to Transportation Committee, and the Environment Committee. And we held a virtual public comment meeting on September 14th. And we presented to the EAC on September 19th. These goals will be brought back and are being brought back to Management Committee and same week to the Council today for approval. And will be submitted to FTA in November for their approval. I just wanted to mention, we did receive some comments from council members and questions relative, can we round up, so to speak, the 11.9% EPA goal to 12%? We also heard comments, for accuracy. We did review that. There's nothing in the regulations that would preclude us from doing that. Dr. Myers also confirmed that he was not aware of anyone being sued for rounding up the goal, but we decided to go with being accurate and precise with the goal. With that, the proposed action before you is to approve the proposed disadvantaged business enterprise goals for FTA and EPA same week. And I will stand for any questions.
Great. Are there any questions by the committee? Awesome.
Just any questions about comment. I appreciate all this work. I really appreciated when Dr. Myers was here and the depth that he went into in describing his methodology, and that's not my field at all, but it was really amazing and impressive to see that and for him to share his knowledge and to, one of my takeaways, and again, acknowledging this is not my field, but it was how confusing sort of the sources that inform our methodology are and just what a difficult landscape we're working in here, so good work.
Yeah, I would second that. And just the fact that you reached out and decided to work with Dr. Myers to take this all on, I think is that body of work is very impressive as well. And I learned a lot in that, and just how much guidance maybe, well, there's a lack of guidance or strict guidance maybe I should say, and this I think for all the right reasons makes a lot of sense because we're on strong legal ground, but we also were then not only testing what we've been doing in the past, but looking at it, I think, I hope I'm saying it right, but maybe through a different lens statistically and how things are calculated and measured. So I think this is really great, and I don't like rounding up. I like to be precise too. So, Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is the second example we're seeing this afternoon of something that's creative, not normally the way we do things, looking at it and going, no, we should approach this differently. And I think that government, we usually is not, that's the forte of how you proceed. I think we are pretty good and a little more unique in that sense that we do take some time to take different approaches. And so, yes, I just, again, saying good work, and I'd like to move that in.
Yeah. And I just appreciated too that, it's gone through a number of our committees so that everybody really has a handle on it. I mean, like, I don't know if I said it out loud, but I was thinking in my head, man, this could be like college credit class, And, I understood it. I got into statistics for about 3 weeks and had to drop. So that's me. But I do like data, and I do like understanding what we're doing and to have it be defensible and to have it yet be, trying to move us forward with our own goals here and then be accountable to them externally to all of the world and our partners and our funders. So I think it's great. More good work, Ashanti. Anything else? All right, so then again, the proposed action is that we move forward to approve the Triennial FTA and EPA DBE program goal. Is there a motion?
I moved it.
Oh, sorry, there was a second already. No?
Second.
Seconded by Osmond, sorry about that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, no. And that passes unanimously, so well done.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, keep applauding all of our staff people, they're doing great work. Yeah, just, Councilmember Barber's been around the council a little bit, and Councilmember Checo was here a long time ago, and some of us are newer, but just in the 4+ years that most of us have been here, it's just amazing where you guys are going, so keep up the great work. Appreciate that. All right, so now we are at a point in time where I would entertain a motion to close the meeting. Councilmember Cedarberg, do you have that for me?
I do. Madam Chair, I move that this meeting also be closed to the public pursuant to Minnesota statutes, section 13D.05, subdivision 3B, and applicable case law, so the committee can discuss with our legal counsel in a confidential setting attorney-client privilege matters.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Lilligren. Just for the audience, a public body may by majority vote in a public meeting decide to hold a closed meeting under section 13D.05 subdivision 3B of the Minnesota Open Meeting Law to discuss attorney-client privilege matters. Discussing these litigation matters in a confidential setting will permit the council to engage in a candid discussion and resolve these matters in a way that benefits the council and the public. Discussion during the closed portion of this meeting to discuss attorney-client matters will be confined to the pending litigation matters listed in the committee agenda. So with that, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and opposed, those say no, and that passes unanimously. So again, before we close the meeting to discuss pending litigation, I would like to inform members of the public who are monitoring this meeting and for the record that the committee will adjourn immediately after the discussion of this information item and that the committee will not have any discussions or conduct any business after this information item is complete. So for the record, please note that this meeting was closed to the public at 3:22 p.m. on October 25th, 2023. And then we'll just wait for the signal that we